and welcome to this review of Algiers' third full-length album, There Is No Year. Good lord, Algiers, I've been itching to talk about them, in greater detail at least, since 2017's thunderous and bombast as fuck The Underside of Power. Good lord, I was super late coming into that album when it dropped, but fuck, it left a lasting impression on me. That ended up making my best of 2017 list, and man, not without good reason. That album rocked. A lashing and explosive album that sounded like it was on fire in the middle of a world that was in the midst of burning. It was the right record for the right time, and holy god, did this band have the chops to bring it across too. Now, 3 years later, we finally have the follow-up here, and I'll tell you one thing, it's going for a different mood. Whereas Underside of Power felt like it was on fire, this record has more of a smoldering, ashy kind of feel to it. It's more of a haunting and sinister record than the last one was. Whereas Underside of Power spoke of the damage that the evil powers in the world were doing at the moment of its release, this record feels more like a rumination on the damages that have been done as a result. The world went ahead and burned, and we couldn't stop it. Now we look around at what's left and wonder, what the hell went wrong? Algiers is one of those bands that's just completely impossible to nail down to one genre, given that they play around with just anything and fucking everything on their records. But one description I have heard for their music is dystopian soul. And you know what? I totally get that, especially on this record. Like, if you had to affix just any kind of label on them, I would say that would be appropriate, because man, is this record soulful, and man, does this record just feel like walking across the surface of a scorched earth. Like, damn, dude. We fucked up. James Franklin Fisher's vocal delivery remains one of the band's biggest assets. This guy is just a powerhouse vocalist. A man who can do just about fucking anything. He can be smooth and sincere and even saccharine in moments. He can be pertinent and thoughtful and prescient and urgent. And when he wants to, he can just sound like a goddamn dire wolf howling at the moon, man. It's amazing. His performances on this album in particular run the gamut, and my god, does he deliver on every single mood he's trying to bring across. A truly soulful singer in every sense of the word. And dystopian is also a great descriptor for them as well, given the lyrical themes and even the approach to this particular album. See, all the lyrics from this record were taken from an epic poem written by Fisher himself. And by epic poem, I don't mean epic poem, dude, sick pentameter. No, I'm talking about the real shit. And you know what? That kind of style is probably the best descriptor for this album lyrically. Poetic. Even without initially knowing that this was based off of an epic poem, I could tell, because my first full spin with the record, I couldn't help but feel how poetic this album's lyrics felt. Turns out I was right to be feeling that way, because that was what was really going on. The themes of loss and regret are put into words and vocal structures that ring so painfully earnest and true. It's just, whew, man. That mood particularly comes across on songs like Losing Is Ours and Nothing Bloomed, those slower, kind of more moodier jams, that smoldering feeling I was talking about. You really get that impression on this album. The mood is further buoyed by the wonderful instrumentation going on here by the rest of the band too. Again, Matt Tong is an absolute king behind the percussion. I loved the bongos on Losing Is Ours, and the beats laced throughout Chaka in particular really elevate that track from groovy to just plain wonderful. Though if I'm being completely honest here, even though his work still does stand out, he's a great drummer overall, this might be Matt's weakest showing? Weak is totally the wrong word here, though. Matt still does an excellent job, but that's the thing. The tone and the other themes this record is trying to explore, the music as it's written, kinda doesn't give Matt the most to work with. Like I mentioned up top, this is a bit of a slower, smoother, more smoldering kind of record. And while Matt does know how to deliver in that style, it's not his trademark. It's not really what I think of when I usually think of Matt Tong's drumming style. It's a little outside of his best work, you know? It's not his comfort zone. The restrained tone of the record kind of holds him back a smooch. But in turn, though, that gives a lot of the other members of the band room to shine. Really, it's Ryan Mahan's programming and synth work that pushes this particular record over the edge for me. That coupled together with Fisher's beautiful and vividly expressive piano work really help build that mournful and crushing tone they're going for. The punchy and vibrant verses of Dispossession, to the twinkling and ominous layering of Hour of the Furnaces, to the haunting and downright frightening background tones in We Can't Be Found. Just, ooh, people, this record is spoopy. There is just a lot to like about this new Algiers record, even if it isn't the record I was necessarily expecting it to be. It feels like an apt and appropriate follow-up to The Underside of Power, even if it's kinda in the way that Empire was an apt follow-up to Star Wars, if you get my drift. It's a moody, more dismal kind of record, and even though there is a lot about this album I admire, I gotta admit it, I still think The Underside of Power is just that little bit better. I mean, like I already mentioned, that album was more of a roaring fire, and this album is more like the smoldering ash left over from that fire. Though that is the exact mood I feel like they were trying to go for here, so I respect the hell out of them for it. They achieved their goal very effectively here. I mean, these guys are great with this style of music, but I feel like Algiers are at their best when they're in full rager mode, when they're going strong. And this album, it isn't that. In fact, some of the best tracks from this record are probably the non-album singles, like Void and Can the Sub Bass Speak, the former being just like a full-blown ass punk rock song. Oh god, I love it. Oh, it's so brutal and crazy and vicious. Can we get an entire record of this, please? And the latter being some wonderfully reflective slam poetry that explores Fisher's own frustrations and struggles at being a crossover musician in both the industry and society. Like, I get why they're not on the record, they just clash so vividly against the rest of the album's tone and the themes they're trying to establish. I get it, but these two tracks are absolute slams. I recommend digging these up on your own, in your own time, in addition to the album itself. But overall, even though this album wasn't what I was expecting it to be necessarily, and even if I would say that this isn't like my favorite Algiers record or anything, I will say that this was still, regardless, an outstandingly strong effort from an outstandingly strong group of musicians. It's still a little early in the year, and I feel like this is going to be one of those records that grows on me with successive listens. But man, I feel like we may have our first potential album of the year candidate in this record. Maybe. Just maybe, people. Don't marry me to that or anything. People, it's January. We got a long way to go before we start talking about that. But yeah, I have no problem giving this an easy recommendation to all of you fans of heavy, soulful rock music out there. Legit, don't pass this up. Another great one from Algiers. There Is No Year gets 4 smoldering bonfires out of 5. But what did you guys think? Were you feeling this album's unique vibe, or did it leave you cold? Feel free to let me know in the comments below. If you liked this video, feel free to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell while you're at it. And until next time, I'm Crash Thompson, and I'll see you in the next video.
Super special thanks to my Madison, LRF Mother,